not going to be paying for it, which you shouldn't. And finally, number 4, any guesses? Seller is broke, and as a consequence, we are seeing sellers following short sales who simply don't move out. They squat. And you have then 2 choices. If you're the buyer, you can bring an eviction to bring them out, or cash for keys. You can negotiate a deal because the seller is saying, look, I got a family, I lost the house, you've gotten the house, I don't have a place to move, I don't have first and last month's rent, I don't have security deposit, besides it's going to be very uncomfortable and I would really appreciate it if you would give us a whole bunch of money. Your buyers need to understand all of these issues and all of these risks before they go and they end up in a short sale, and then of course the price needs to be commensurate. So, having heard this, does this mean that if you are considering doing short sales that you instead should, apply for a job in a toll booth? And the answer is no. These short sales are happening. They are taking a huge percentage, a very large minority of the real estate transactions, and you need to become experts in this and practice this yourselves, which brings me to the subject of short sale negotiators. I am firmly against them, and I will tell you, if there are short sale negotiators who are doing this for a living, raise your hand because I'll be glad to discuss this with you. Here's the problem. When you, as a realtor, practice real estate, you have insurance. When you abdicate the throne of authority to a short sale negotiator, if they mess up, you get sued. That's the first reward, okay? The second reward is who pays them, and we're seeing a tremendous number of problems. The Department of Real Estate is being very active in prosecuting people who fund short sale negotiators inappropriately, and the authorities at the state level and the federal level are now beginning to examine the possibility of criminal prosecutions for lender fraud, for bank fraud, and here's how it works. When the lender who is taking a haircut gets a BPO, the broker price opinion, saying the property is worth $700,000, and they're going to take $700,000 even though they are owed, $1.2 million. When they are going to take that $700,000, it's because they have formed the opinion in reliance on the realtors that the property is worth $700,000 to a buyer. That's what a buyer will pay. So when the buyer is willing to pay $700,000 and then the buyer also ends up paying a fee for a short sale negotiator, that's bank fraud, because the bank is going to take the position, as will the FDIC, that they should have gotten that money. When the buyer is willing to also buy the furniture of the seller for $10,000 or $100,000, that's bank fraud, because the bank will say the buyer was really willing to pay more than $700,000. That money should have gone to the lender. When the buyer is willing to let the seller stay in the property at no rent, or for a reduced rent, or for any rent, that doesn't look like a real sale. The buyer was willing to give up another benefit, possession of the premises at the close of escrow, and the lender is going to take the position that they should have gotten that money. Now, it's really the buyer who's doing this and the seller who's conspiring, and they're really the criminals in that case. But that's not rewarding to the prosecutors. Our entire legal system operates on a system of betrayal, and the prosecutors understand that it is extremely unpopular to take consumers, to take the little guy and put him in prison. So what they instead do is they get the little guy, the seller or the buyer, and they say to him, look, we think you've committed a felony, we think you need to go to prison for 20 years, we think that it was your idea to arrange this purchase of the furniture or the stereo system for $100,000. And so we think you need to go to prison. Now, if this wasn't your idea, if this was really the realtor's idea, now would be the time to tell us, and we will give you immunity from prosecution in exchange for your fine testimony as a stand-up citizen of the United States. This is how this works. You may remember years ago when you heard on the radio that Monica Lewinsky and her mother were being threatened with criminal prosecution. Anybody remember that? There was a period of time when they were threatened with criminal prosecution, and you might have asked yourself, for what? Then the next thing you heard a couple of days later is that they had both gotten immunity, and the next thing you heard a couple of days later is the president confessing to the blue dress, because he understood that she had gotten immunity and was now going to testify when she had been otherwise reluctant. This is how it works. It's a system of betrayal. And so when you check a box, for example, that says that the property is going to be owner occupied when it isn't, and you know it, that buyer later who committed loan fraud will then explain where they got the idea. So it is a time when the rules of practicing real estate sound frightening, but let me make this much easier and less frightening. It isn't frightening. You just can't do things that are illegal. You just can't abandon the responsibility of conducting the short sale yourself. You just have to conduct it yourself. And you are in a position where you can do that. I know a number of you have consultation accounts with our office. By the way, there are brochures on each. Our law firm resume and my business card is on each table. If you run out, Sonny has a whole stack more. We're happy to help you in the brief situations where you need that. As a general proposition, you don't need that help from us. As a general proposition, if you remember that everything you say needs to be the truth, if you remember that every benefit that's going to go to this lender needs to be transparent, it can work. So here's how you can buy the furniture, the buyer can buy the furniture. If it's in writing, in very clear disclosure, very early in the short sale process, then the buyer can pay for the furniture, or the seller can stay in possession, or whatever it is, as long as it's in writing, extremely clearly set forth. It can't be cagey words. It's got to be plainly set forth and early in the process. Here's what that means. When you send your first package to the lender that's taking the haircut, if you put that in the package, not just in the body and so forth, but in the cover letter, so it's clear that this is what the intended transaction is. This is the price, this is what the furniture will be, this is how long the seller can stay in possession. If it goes in early, so it goes to the committee, so when you get the lender approval letter, the short sale approval letter back, it is a function of having gotten all those disclosures. Now you can have other things that happen and it's perfectly okay. If you want to give up part of your commission to pay for things, that's okay, but that should be disclosed too. The only place you get in trouble is when there's an off-the-record, behind the barn, under the table, handshake deal where you say, and if anybody says anything, I'll deny I ever knew it. You just made that person into a witness. You, by the way, just told that person you're a crook. But that's the place where the trouble comes up. We are not seeing people get in trouble who don't do those things at all. We're seeing that short sales can be a tremendous opportunity for making it through this market. They are really turning out to be a major economic force, and I anticipate that they're going to continue for a number of years to come, because the government and the lenders nationwide are making individual decisions that are turning out to take the entire recession and spread it out. They're not foreclosing fast. They're not. You've all heard about this next wave of foreclosures that's coming, and you've been hearing that for 3 years. But it's not a wave, it's a trickle, and it will continue to trickle. And because nobody, the lenders and the government, no one wants the prices to crash the way they would if they did it all at once. So they're doing it very, very slowly. That means short sales will continue to be a serious opportunity for real estate professionals for the next number of years. Don't know how many. Could be 3 or 4, could be 5 or 10, but it's going to be there as a presence and as a substantial minority of the transactions that take place. Questions, comments, feelings?
If you have to disclose everything, how do you get away with cash for keys?
If you have to disclose everything, how do you get away with cash for keys?
Right.
Once the transaction is closed and the seller is actually in breach of contract, there is no more haircut to be taken. Your only 2 remedies are unlawful detainer or cash for keys. At that point, it's not costing the lender anything. And the explanation is that the buyer wasn't willing to pay more. The buyer already bought the place, has no choice now. If they want to get possession, they can do an unlawful detainer or cash for keys. So that is not something. Now, what you can't do is you can't say quietly, okay, seller, what will happen is when the thing closes, then we'll give you cash for keys. It can't be conspiratorial. It can't be something that's cooperative or collaborative with the seller. It's got to only be done in a situation where the seller actually, honestly, is in breach, and it's not something you want to strive for if you represent a buyer. Because if you make a side deal that says, yeah, we'll give you this much cash for keys, once the seller knows that, when the deal closes, it won't be this much anymore. It would be a great deal more. Yes. I'll go here and I'll go there next. Go.
What is the difference between how a short sale is reported on the credit versus a foreclosure, and how can you influence how it is reported?
Everybody hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the rule as I heard it most recently, but maybe some of you know even more recent rules. The reason I'm saying it that way is this has been changing and changing and changing, and it's going to change 20 more times. The latest thing I heard is that the short sale for Fannie and Freddie loans prevents you from getting another loan for 2 years. A foreclosure is 4 years. Has anybody heard anything different? Has anybody heard that? Raise your hand if you've heard that.
I heard the same thing, but 5 for foreclosure.
5 for foreclosure, 2 for short sale. So, and that's the Fannie and Freddie rule. So individual lenders might do something different. Private lenders, of course, can do anything they want. But for Fannie and Freddie, that accounts for so much of the market. Those are, it's either 2 and 4 or 2 and 5, or it's something different, and I haven't heard it yet this morning. But those are good rules of thumb. And by the way, it's not going to be the same thing as it was. You know, if you went in 20 years ago and said, you know, I had a foreclosure, you're never going to buy a house again in your life. And the loan officer would look at you and say, you know, that's horrible. Now, 5 and 10 and 15 years from now, when you walk in and say to the loan officer, you know, I had a foreclosure, the loan officer is going to say, yeah, so did I. You know, you've got a tremendous, the volume of this is huge, and it's changing the way the recovery will work. And speaking of recovery, I think 2011, just remember I said this in January, I think 2011 you're going to see a serious increase in the volume of residential home sales in this area. Because what is happening now is the uncertainty is disappearing. And it's the uncertainty that is causing some buyers to think, I don't want to buy because I think prices are going to drop more, and causing some sellers who want to sell but don't have to say, I'm waiting until the buyers don't think that anymore. I think that things have sufficiently clarified so that a lot of those buyers are understanding that really now is a time to buy because interest rates remain low, while prices are just beginning to hint that they have not only stabilized but might go up. So I think for those who have not abandoned real estate, you're going to be around for the next few years. You're going to have, I think, in 2012 and 13 and 14, you're going to have some incredible years that will produce very well. John.
It's taken lenders a certain period of time after you stop making payments to issue demand notices.
Can't hear over here.
I've had clients.
I'll repeat it.
I've had clients ask me, how long can I stay in my house? And I don't really want to say anything. I you know, I don't know. All lenders are different. But the people that I talk to, and I want to ask you if this is okay to say, so the people I've talked to are the agents that have done this and said that their clients have been able to stay almost up to a year, sometimes longer. Is there an answer I can give?
Yes, here's the answer. The question is, how long, when I'm asked, how long if I stop paying my payments, how long can I stay in the house? Here is a concrete answer you can give. The first piece of the answer is I don't know, because I don't know how soon they'll start a foreclosure. But once they start a foreclosure, it will be 4 months until you no longer own your house, and it will be at least another 3 or 4 weeks before you're dispossessed. So you can figure that it will be 5 months from the time the notice of default is recorded. That part I can tell you. Here's the part I can't tell you, is what I would say to the client, is how long it will be until they record the notice of default and start that 4-month, then one additional month process. Because some lenders are doing it the day after, other lenders are doing it months after. I know of 2 people specifically who haven't paid a payment in over 2 years, and there's been no notice of default, but there's lots of conversation and a lot of correspondence. So the answer has to be, I don't know when they'll start, but once they start, it's 5 months. And anything that you think is a rule of thumb could change from lender to lender, and